In 2006, President Barack Obama delivered the commencement speech for Northwestern University, and in it, he made a huge error. Let's see if you can catch it.
You know, there's a lot of talk in this country about the federal deficit. I think we should talk more about another deficit, what I call the empathy deficit, the ability to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, to see the world through those who are different from us, the child who's hungry, the laid-off steel worker, the immigrant woman who's cleaning up your dorm room.
It was a moving and important message that I tend to agree with. The problem is that President Obama wasn't describing empathy. He was describing perspective taking. I'm a human connection specialist, and one of the most common questions I'm asked after delivering a keynote or a workshop is, why don't you ever talk about empathy? It's reasonable to assume that I'd spend a lot of time on empathy, why it's so important and how to develop it or get better at it. Yet, I rarely even use the word. And in this video, I'm gonna clear up the confusion around empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel what someone else is feeling as if it were happening to you. You see this idea expressed in science fiction characters known as empaths. Think of Professor X, his characterization in the First Class movie trilogy, not so much the original comics, or Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy. Here in the real world, empath is also used to describe the personality type of people who are highly sensitive to others' feelings and emotions. And as we will discuss a little bit later, that is not necessarily a good thing. Perspective taking, on the other hand, is the ability to see the world from the point of view of another person. Notice, this has nothing to do with feelings or emotions. Rather, perspective taking is about understanding where someone's coming from and why they might hold the views that they do. At this point, you might be saying, Brian, why are you being so pedantic about the particular use of these words? Our world is literally shaped by the words we use. As Wittgenstein said, the limits of my language means the limits of my world. If we're not using the same words in the same way, our entire ability to understand each other breaks down and all conversation is fraught. So let's talk about empathy as properly defined. The big question is, are we really losing our ability to empathize? In short, yes. A decades-long study from the University of Michigan revealed that measurable empathy among college students declined 40% between the 1970s and the 2000s. Most of that decline happened in the last decade of the study, concurrent with the rise of social media as communication moved from in-person or phone calls to texts and emojis. I know, this is like one of those get off my lawn moments.
I'm too old for that stuff.
The truth is, digital communication creates a psychological barrier between you and the person you're conversing with. We craft, edit, and curate our responses to the point where there's no humanity left. And in the absence of tone of voice, eye contact, or body language, it's almost impossible to treat someone as an individual with feelings, worries, and concerns similar to ourselves. I call this the magic of mess. Real in-person conversations are messy. When we say something hurtful, we immediately see the impact and we feel bad or guilty. Because deep down, we each have an instinct to be fair and kind. The real-time aspect of conversation scares people, especially millennials and Gen Z who grew up with a viable alternative. And it feels safer, but it's not safer. It's merely more comfortable. And the science about comfort is clear. The only time we learn and grow as humans is when we are pushed outside of our comfort zone. So if empathy is so obviously good and we are losing our ability to do it, why don't I talk about it as a human connection specialist? To answer that, let's try a thought experiment. You're walking alone past a shallow lake and you notice a small child drowning. You can easily wade in. What do? If you're like all non-sociopathic adults, you jump in and save the child without a second thought. Of course you do. But that answer is very revealing about empathy. Let's turn to Paul Bloom, a professor of psychology at Yale University. It is possible, I suppose, that you might imagine what it feels like to be drowning or anticipate what it would be like to be the child's mother or father hearing that she drowned. But that's hardly necessary. You don't need empathy to realize it's wrong to let the child drown. Any normal person would just wade in and scoop up the child without bothering with any of this empathetic hoo-ha. Bloom's point isn't that empathy is bad, but that it's not necessary for making good moral decisions. The question then is, of course, what is necessary for making good moral decisions? And the answer is perspective taking. So let's talk about the difference between skills and emotions. I don't talk about empathy because empathy is an emotional state. It's something you feel. And it's really hard to teach somebody how to feel something more, better, or at all. Yes, it can be done. Therapists spend months or years meeting regularly with clients to make those kinds of changes. I know because my wife is a therapist, but I'm a speaker, I'm a consultant. The reason I teach perspective taking is because it is a skill. And as a skill, it can be learned, honed, practiced, and developed by absolutely anyone. And just like any other skill, you will improve with repeated practice and commitment over time. What improves? What improves is your ability to understand someone else's point of view. Not to feel what they're feeling, but to see the world from their perspective. Crucially, it allows us to figure out where we disagree. Does this person know something you don't? Do they believe something you don't? Do they want something you don't want? If you've ever seen an airline passenger screaming at a gate agent because the door's closed and they want to get on their flight, you realize how useful perspective taking would be. The passenger and the gate agent both want the same thing. They want that passenger to make their flight. And probably they also know the same thing. The door is closed, but the plane's still here. I can see it outside the window. But if the passenger did even a little perspective taking, they would realize their beliefs are off from the gate agent. They could ask the agent, under what circumstances could you open that door for us? And the gate agent would say, there are no circumstances. It's against airline policy for safety reasons. I literally cannot open that door no matter what the circumstances. I couldn't open it for my own mother. I'm so sorry. Let me help you find a different flight. The passenger and the gate agent are misaligned on beliefs. The passenger believed it was possible for the gate agent to open the door if only they yelled loud enough or pleaded enough or said just the right words. But that belief was mistaken. Perspective taking wouldn't get the jet bridge door open, but it would open a conversational door about how to get on a different flight with the least amount of delay. Kindness and respect always win out. We know that, but emotions tend to cloud that fact. Now, that's the practical reason I don't usually discuss empathy, but there's also a darker reason. Earlier in this video, I mentioned that being highly sensitive to other people's emotions is not necessarily a good thing. Empaths often have trouble distinguishing their own emotions from others. Such jarring emotional swings can lead to burnout, anxiety, and a host of related physical symptoms like distressed stomach and headaches. Worse, decisions made from a place of empathy, while well-intentioned, are often irrational, and studies prove it. In one psychological experiment, subjects were asked how much money they would give to help develop a drug that would save the life of one child. Other subjects were asked how much they would give to save the lives of 8 children. And people gave roughly the same in both situations. But a third group was asked about a single child and also shown a picture with the child's name. In this circumstance, donations went through the roof. In fact, that group gave significantly higher donations to one child than anyone in the study gave to 8. So what's going on here? Well, this is known as the identifiable victim effect. And it's a short circuit in our rationality caused by...
The category is nonsense words.
Empathy. We are much more likely to give or help when we see specifically who our efforts are helping. That's the basis of reciprocal altruism. I feel good seeing somebody else benefit from my good deeds, so I want to do more of it. That's a really useful part of our biology, and it's held over from the early days of humanity when helping a single person at a time in your immediate vicinity was the key to survival. But today, the most helpful you can be, dollar for dollar, is simply donating to the fight against malaria. And the very best way to do that is to automate your monthly donation, just like any other bill you pay. You'll save more lives, you'll do more good simply by staying home and sending automated payments to Against Malaria Foundation. This is what Paul Bloom calls rational compassion, but it doesn't feel good to do that. It feels so much better to donate to a local cause in your community where you can see your money being put to work. And it feels even better to donate to a specific child who you might eventually meet. They could hug you or thank you, and you'll definitely get that sweet selfie for social media. So what we find is empathy is good in theory, but it's often problematic in practice. Parents know the difference between empathy and rational compassion. Ever heard a child screaming at their parent, "You're ruining my life"? Your child wants to eat ice cream for dinner or play video games instead of reading.
No.
How about this?
Empathy makes us feel their anguish and disappointment as if it was our own. What's the harm in letting them eat ice cream for dinner? It'll make them so happy. But that's not our job as parents, to make them happy. Our job is to guide them to be healthy adults who make good decisions. And part of that is sacrificing their short-term happiness for long-term fulfillment, a choice they cannot yet make for themselves. Parents act out of rational compassion when they tell their child, "No, I'm not buying you a toy. We're shopping for your cousin's birthday." They suffer the emotional meltdown ultrasound knowing it's in their child's long-term best interest. Too much empathy as a parent could turn a child into a selfish monster. When your child's throwing a fit over finishing their vegetables or not getting a toy, perspective taking is a better tool. It allows you to truly understand where the child's coming from, which in turn makes it easier to make the right decision without feeling like a terrible parent, while also being nurturing and kind in the face of
You're ruining my life! I'm moving out of North. I'm never coming back, ever.
I'm not for a second arguing that empathy is all out bad, and perspective taking is always the answer. The decline of empathy across society, it is worrisome. And while too much empathy might lead us to irrational decisions, at least they are irrationally well-intentioned. On the other hand, too little empathy leads to an uncaring society who prefers yelling past each other and cutting people down to righteously advance any cause. I would rather have too much empathy than too little. Still, in the brief time I get during a live program, I can't teach someone how to be more empathic. And really, neither can the self-help industry. If you want to be a more empathic person, you should consult a therapist. You can, however, learn the skill of perspective taking. And if you practice that skill over time, you will naturally become more empathic. If you want to learn and develop the skill of perspective taking, start with my free resource, 7 Ways to Talk to Anyone Without Looking Like an Idiot. You can get it right here for free at softskillsarehard.com. That said, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and I will see you soon.